Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Today, we are getting to know the largest figure in town. In fact, the largest indoor statue in this hemisphere. The statue of Athena stands nearly 42 feet tall inside Nashville's Parthenon. She was unveiled to the public 35 years ago. It is an unmatched archaeological and artistic work, and to celebrate her big birthday, she's going to be joined by other monumental figures throughout the summer, many of them with Nashville connections, all by the same sculptor who found a way to bring Athena to life. We are live in the studio for this episode, but producer Josh Deepen kicks us off by taking us to the foot of Athena, inside the main hall, the nace of Nashville's Parthenon. Let's take a listen.
When you walk into the sanctuary of the Parthenon, you will find yourself being stared down. Not by a wandering tourist or an overprotective security officer, but rather by the Greek goddess of war herself.
41 feet 10 inches tall, Athena was the main goddess of the city of Athens, and a goddess of wisdom and a goddess of warfare, of arts and crafts, especially weaving.
That's Helen Sanders. She's the director of education at the Parthenon.
So we see Athena standing with her helmet and her spear and her shield. She's wearing a long dress called a peplos and special armor. The special armor on her chest has a very scary face, the face of Medusa, the Gorgon, the monster who turned people into stone in Greek myth.
Sanders says there's a few reasons we were long ago dubbed the Athens of the South. Nashvillians have been proud of our universities and of being a center of culture and learning. Still, arguably one of the most Greek things about us is Athena's home, the Parthenon. This full-scale replica was born nearly a century before local sculptor Alan LeQuire worked with a team of artists to complete the statue of Athena. And that took 8 years.
It started out as a project that was meant to take 18 months, and I stuck to my promise, my proposal, which was to make it as archaeologically correct as possible. And in order to do so, I really used the knowledge and assistance of archaeologists, all of them leaders in the field of the 5th century BC Greek sculpture. I was going to build it in plaster over a wood and wire frame because it's fast, and I knew I could finish it within the time frame. The engineers were concerned that one, it would topple, but more importantly, it would be too heavy. I had to change the entire construction plan, and I redesigned everything to go on an aluminum armature and to be modeled in clay and cast in lightweight gypsum cement.
There are only a handful of artists that have the opportunity to create, artworks depicting deities and gods. What do you think it means as an artist to have this privilege to do something like that?
I never wanted to make gods, goddesses, or mythological figures at all. I wanted to make real people. Whenever I looked at, Greek or Roman statues, I imagined my friends and family in the positions of those figures. I wanted to make real people, not imaginary people.
His idea with monumental figures was to take regular people and make them monumental in size. So he was completely free to choose the subjects, the poses, his approach, however he wanted to do that.
Parthenon Museum curator Jennifer Richardson says the new exhibition, Monumental Figures, was a rare opportunity to invite someone like LeQuire to not have to work on commission.
There's 24 pieces. All of them are on a colossal scale. At least heroic scale. They're very large.
These colossal heroes are each about 12 feet tall. They include civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer, the late Vanderbilt neonatologist Dr. Mildred Stallman, and also Meharry Dr. Dorothy Brown, who was the first African-American female surgeon in the South. But he also included more mainstream icons like Joan Baez and a few Olympians.
I sort of look on the Parthenon as, it's our symbol of culture, but for me, it's a monument that honors women. There's that big one inside there, Athena. In my personal experience, it's always been a place where women were in charge.
You can visit monumental figures at the Parthenon in Centennial Park through September 21st of this year. Reporting for This is Nashville, Josh Deepen, WPLN News.
I'll meet you at the Parthenon.
I mean, how many songs say the word Parthenon? You got to use it here. We're back in the studio live. We've forced Alan LeQuire to sit here listening to his own interview. But now he's here live with us in the studio. Welcome, Alan LeQuire.
Thank you very much.
So what is your relationship with Athena these days? Do you visit often?
I inspect Athena annually, every May.
Is this contractual?
Yes, it is contractual. I inspect her. I crawl up inside her and make sure that she's still in good shape. And I'm proud to say that she is. She's not going to fall down.
Well, we will get into that over time, but truly, you have an ongoing relationship with Athena, not just this show that you're setting up there now.
Yes.
Wow. I called my good friend Wesley Payne, who was the director of the Parthenon for a long time, and was there when everyone decided to move forward with building Athena, and she says that back in 1982, they were looking to see if they had enough money to move forward with building Athena. And to get a rough estimate, they asked the only sculptor they knew, and that was you. And I think they had about $30,000 saved up. It sounds like a lot of it was from school children dropping nickels into a donation box. So they put out this open call for proposals, and it sounds like you may have been the only one who thought he could actually make a full-scale, 42-foot-tall replica. I do wonder what scared off the other sculptors from taking this thing on.
Well, actually, there were 5 different artists who made proposals. So they weren't really scared off, but I don't think any of them intended to make her full scale.
Right.
I was the only one who wanted to do that. And I was just naive. I had
really?
no idea about what things cost. So when they said $40,000, they upped the $27,000 was up to $40,000. And when I heard that number, it just sounded like, oh, you could do anything with $40,000. So.
Right. This was 1982, right?
Right.
You started in October of 1982, the month I was born. It was supposed to take, 18 months, 2 years. If my math is right, you didn't finish until I was in 2nd grade. So what made, in fact, I saw some pictures of you working on it from your old website, and you even aged, I think, in that period. What made building Athena even harder than you expected? Get into these challenges that y'all ran into, which I assume was mostly surrounded by the weight of the structure herself, right?
Right. I think my original proposal would have worked, but the city engineers were worried about the basement of the Parthenon, where we have art galleries and offices, and they tried to come up with an actual number, and when they gave me the number, which was 9 tons, I couldn't guarantee that I could stay under that number.
Honestly, the way she was built with, I think, aluminum, it doesn't sound that much lighter to me. What is it that really cut the weight down, the new way that you all decided to build Athena?
Well, the big change I made was to sculpt everything in clay first and then make molds and cast it in a lightweight material. So that's the only way I could guarantee that the thickness of the casting would be consistent, and I could estimate the weight based on that. The other way of making her directly, I couldn't guarantee a consistent surface.
Oh, I see. With the other options, I mean, it sounds like you all had to get creative with materials in all sorts of ways. I mean, is it true Athena's spear used to be like a flagpole?
Yeah, right. I was going to make it out of wood, but every day I'd come to work at the Parthenon, and they were building a new McDonald's on West End, and they put flagpoles all around it like it was the UN or something. And I thought, wow, I measured one, and it was perfect for the
No way.
for the Spear of Athena. So I asked my friend Don Maley, who was a supporter of the project, if he could get me a flagpole from McDonald's, and he did it within a few days.
How did that conversation go?
Well, I told him I was going to go steal the flagpole that night, and Don said, well, wait a minute, let me see if I can do something. And he got McDonald's to donate it.
Wow. So it obviously the length of time it took to build Athena was much longer than expected. I assume it took more than the $30,000 or $40,000. Do you all know kind of what it took to do this over 8 years?
Well, I was paid $1,000 a month for 87 months. So $87,000 plus. I think we had scaffolding we had to pay for, and a few other things like that.
Yeah.
If you count the in-kind donations of materials, it comes out to be like a little over $200,000.
Wow. Well, she's certainly, gotten her money's worth, I think. If you're just joining us, I'm Blake Farmer. Yes, you are listening to This is Nashville. And we're talking to sculptor Alan LeQuire about the creation of Athena, who turns 35 this summer. Let's bring in Helen Sanders, Director of Education at the Parthenon, to help answer the question that so often comes up when people see this Greek temple in the middle of the city's flagship park, not to mention the gigantic Greek goddess that's inside. Where did our city's fascination with Greek mythology come from?
This is the best question to start with, which is why.
Right.
And the short answer is that there was a big fair called the Tennessee Centennial Exposition in 1897. Nashville already had a nickname, the Athens of the South, because Nashvillians were proud of their culture and learning. We already had a state capital with a Greek cupola on top. And so the organizers of the fair created a version of the Parthenon that served as an art gallery. What's more interesting than why it appeared, because it was pretty conventional to have classical style architecture in all these Victorian era fairs. What's more interesting is really why it remained. So what's unusual is that it's still standing, and that a newer version was built over the foundations more permanently in concrete. And this is the version that we see and visit today. It's a concrete version of the Parthenon, an exact replica in terms of size, scale, architectural elements. And we continue to serve as a museum of art and history.
And it was just not to say just a museum, but it was only a gallery for a long, long time. But was there always a plan to add Athena? Do we know if the folks who made it a permanent structure thought that was what needed to go in there, just like the Parthenon in Greece?
We know that they did have interest in adding the Athena, because we have preserved in the Parthenon today a small model of an Athena Parthenos made by Belle Kinney-Schultz in the 1930s. So she was a sculptor who had created the pedimental sculptures on the outside triangles. And had they had the resources to go forward, she would have created a version that looks a little different than Alan's version. And we have a model of that. So that tells us, yes, they wanted to do this even if they didn't have the resources.
I am guessing that most people who visit the Parthenon these days probably don't have that knowledge in their head, which is why you're so good at rattling it off to them. But what kind of theories do you overhear from folks? Because it's all sorts of tourists and people who show up and are confused why this is here. What do people think who don't know the story?
So what I find marvelous is we are unexpected.
Yeah.
We're an unexpected experience. And because people don't know what to expect, what happens is people come upstairs into the naos, into the central room. They see this enormous, magnificent statue, and they feel a sense of wonder and awe. And to me, this is amazing because I think truly this recreates the intent of the ancient Greeks with their statue. And I think it's a very unconventional museum experience. And it opens us up to all sorts of exploration with art and history because it's so unexpected.
Alan, how closely did you try to replicate Athena, and what did you go off of?
Well, I used the model that Bell Kinney Schultz had made, but I also compared all the latest theories at that moment, which was 1982, from contemporary archaeologists. There were three primarily ones. Brunhilde Ridgway was the most important one. Evelyn Harrison in New York, and Nita Lipin in Toronto, Ontario.
I mean, what do we know about the original Helen? I mean, we're talking about 5th century BC, right?
Yes. So the ancient statue no longer survives.
Right.
But we have really important documentation because it was so famous. We have smaller scale versions. We have written literary sources, including a guy named Pausanias, who was writing basically a guidebook for Roman tourists in Greece. We have images on coins and gems. We have the remains of the building itself, which Alan studied. So what comes out of this are places where there is agreement about what it looked like, places where there's disagreement and different possible theories, and other places where we just don't know. And Alan's achievement was to try and reconcile all of these different sources into a consistent and coherent vision of what this looked like.
Wow. Well, growing up, we were swapping stories in the here in the newsroom. In fact, Nina Cardona was talking about having this memory of going to the Parthenon on a high school field trip. She grew up in Rutherford County, and that Athena was under construction, maybe behind a curtain, but you could just see her toe. And of course, just seeing the toe gives you an idea of how big Athena is. I remember, Athena as being kind of flat because this was before, she had the gleam in her eye like she does now, because in 2002, you all went back and gilded her. I mean, made her mostly gold, gave her makeup. Why was that step taken, 12 years later?
That was always my intention, was to
really
complete the statue with gold leaf and paint, because the original was chryselephantine. It was gold and ivory.
Gold plated, right? Not just...
Yeah, it was cast gold plates that were applied to a wooden core.
Wow. So, I've heard from several people that there was concern about even doing it because it, of course, would look nothing like the ancient statues that we have. What kind of feedback did you get?
Most people hated it.
What about you?
I actually prefer, I'm guilty as well. I prefer the plain, unadorned surface, but that's got nothing to do with what the taste of the Greeks in the 5th century. They wanted everything adorned and bejeweled and decorated in every way. And I did what you see that we've done is 23.75 carat gold leaf, and the ivory parts are painted, but it's still toned way down from what I think and what most archaeologists think that the original would have had on it.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will get a preview of Alan LeQuire's new exhibit that will surround Athena through September, meet some of those monumental figures, and stay with us. This is Nashville. We'll be
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org. Funding for This Is Nashville comes from Burr and Foreman Law Firm, serving clients with transactional, litigation, and regulatory needs. Discovering how each client defines a win and working with them every step of the way to achieve it. Burr.com.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Welcome back. On today's show, we are blowing out 35 candles in honor of Nashville's goddess. If you've never been inside the Parthenon in Centennial Park, then you may have never been humbled in the presence of Athena, the Greek goddess of war and wisdom, the patron deity of Athens. As part of this big birthday, the Parthenon is also unveiling a new exhibition from sculptor Alan LeQuire. Monumental figures, all larger than life, like Athena. Not quite as big as Athena, though. All powerful women, though, from this more recent history instead of the 5th century BC. Alan is with us for the full hour. We also bring in Parthenon curator Jennifer Richardson. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thanks.
So, we'll get back to Athena shortly, but Jennifer, tell us about these other monumental figures that will join, the birthday girl. Why this exhibit? Why now?
We wanted to celebrate the birthday of Athena, and we talk about Athena all the time at the Parthenon, and I thought this would be a really wonderful time to explore one of our visitors' main questions, which is, how did Athena get in here? Did they carry her in through the doors? Like, they can't even imagine. And so that took me to Alan LeQuire, and we decided to create an exhibit called Goddess in Progress, which we hoped would coincide with his book that's being released soon, and explore how Athena was created. And while we were in those discussions, we thought it would be really wonderful to show Alan's new work. And that kind of led us to creating a new show of brand new work, not just recent work, but brand new work. And it was a really wonderful opportunity to bring out one of Nashville's best loved artists and celebrate Athena at the same time.
Yeah, you can't shake a stick without hitting one of Alan's sculptures in town. What is the significance of placing them upstairs? I think, am I pronouncing this term correctly? The naos.
Naos.
Naos. So that's the main hall of, do you all use the term naos often?
We use it all the time.
All right. So in the naos, I got the impression that was sort of sacred space, that there hadn't been art displayed up there very often. What's the significance?
Yeah, in the original, well, I don't want to say the original, but when the building reopened in the 30s, it was kind of the art museum of the city. So there was art on the walls then. And then in the 90s, we started moving art downstairs, I suppose. It wasn't upstairs as often anymore. And we've been
because Alan was making a mess up there.
Well, we were redesigning things. Yeah, there was a lot going on. But we focused the art gallery on the lower levels, kind of the main place for artwork recently. We do have an annual exhibit of student artwork upstairs, but it seemed fitting that we would have like this piece that Alan made at the beginning of his career that was commissioned and very historically focused. So there wasn't a lot of free choice for him in that. And have work that was brand new, kind of in the maturity of his career. And he could choose exactly what that would be, which is not something artists working on commission often get to do.
Alan, you've got civil rights leaders, Olympians, local physicians, Joan Baez, a singer-songwriter, for those who may not have kept up with her. But what is the through line? Could you draw a connection to Athena from those figures?
Well, I haven't really done that. They're separate in my mind. But
yeah,
you could describe them all as Athena women.
Yeah.
But I wanted just to concentrate on real people, and unfortunately, everything has to compete with her because she dominates the space. So that was sort of the biggest challenge of showing in that space.
Do you have a favorite? And I guess I recall you mentioning Fannie Lou Hamer, who I had to sort of look up her story.
I remembered Fannie Lou because I watched her testify at the Democratic National Convention in '64, and I never forgot it. She was preempted by Lyndon Johnson, who knew that her testimony would be earth-shattering, and once the TV stations had figured that out, they ran her testimony over and over. And that's why I saw it, because I was 9 years old and my mother, sat me down in front of a TV. But she remains a real hero to me. And I had this vision a long time ago. I spent 40 years making commissioned work, which is the work you see all over. But when Jennifer gave me this opportunity, I thought, oh, wow, for the first time, all these ideas I've been holding back, in storage, sort of, I could bring all this out. And so it was a tremendous opportunity for me. But the vision of Fannie Lou was sort of something I had when I was in my 20s, and I was at the Forum in Rome, and there was that giant head of Constantine. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be great if that were a real person and not, an emperor? And that's where Fannie Lou, the giant head of Fannie Lou, came to my mind.
Does she have a special place in this exhibition?
Yes, she's outside. She's the only piece that's outside.
So where would you see her if you're coming up to the Parthenon?
She's in front of the eastern entrance, sort of above. We actually enter our Parthenon from the basement. Right. So you'll be walking under her to get into the Parthenon.
So this Mississippi civil rights activist, you've also got, one of the first black female surgeon in the Southeast, Dr. Dorothy Brown, Dr. Mildred Stallman, a neonatology pioneer at Vanderbilt, Diane Nash, obviously famous for nonviolent protest, a fifth student leader of the Nashville sit-ins, Odetta, not Settles, Holmes, the folk singer, civil rights activist. These figures, they've all been living in your mind and now are sitting alongside your the work that kind of put you on the map, I suppose. It feels like a full circle moment to me.
Yeah, it is, definitely. And I think it works. I mean, we're just installing this week, so I'm seeing these figures in the Parthenon for the first time, and it's going really well. They have a relationship with the giant statue of Athena. It's unavoidable, but they are working well together, I think.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Blake Farmer. We're talking about a new exhibit at the Parthenon for the first time, an exhibit that's surrounding the 42-foot-tall Athena with other sculptures, all by the same artist, Alan LeQuire. Jennifer Richardson, curator of the Parthenon, on the ceiling, you've got these suspended works. Were you all just looking for some way to make this more complicated than it had to be?
That was actually the goal, I suppose, or the first impetus for this new work. I think when Alan's ideas were kind of coming out, the first one that was shared with us was the idea of figures suspended in front of Athena. And then it was large figures in the aisles. And then it was a large head outside. And then it was torsos in the treasury. And then just as we were getting ready to go to send our text for translation, Alan's like, we're going to add 8 more pieces.
Wow.
So we were saying it was 24 pieces, but now I think it's actually 32 because there are 8 panels that have been added, and they'll be positioned between the large figures.
Well, has the suspension work already been completed, or are you in the middle of things?
It's in progress right now.
Okay, so you're really thinking about that and how you're going to hoist these things up.
Exactly.
How is this an engineering challenge?
Yes.
Well, how are you going to do it?
Well,
or do you know yet?
When they rebuilt the Parthenon in the late 20s, they built a very stout roof girder system that is big steel beams, and there's the roof of the Parthenon is basically a concrete slab, so it's the structure is made to support immense amounts of weight, and that was beneficial to me when I was building Athena, because I had to hoist everything up on a pulley, all the parts of Athena, so that I could assemble them. And we're using the same structure today to suspend these figures in front of Athena.
Well, has there been any issue with, over time, you were talking about your annual inspections of Athena and I suppose the rest of the building, but how is she holding up after 35 years?
She's holding up great. I mean,
do you have to make repairs?
I have not had to make a single repair.
Really?
There were things that I didn't finish that I should have finished, but I look at those every year. Oh, I didn't paint this piece of steel. I should have painted. I should bring my brush with me next time. But the surface, the structure and the design of the structure was perfect. It's lasted and held up very well.
My understanding was there some of the concern from, I guess, city engineers, whatever that means, back in the day, was the New Madrid Fault or something, and that and it would have to withstand an earthquake. Was that part of what had to change?
Yeah, that was part of the design and engineering. At one point, my aluminum structure was approved, but they wanted me to put guy wires from her to the interior architrave of the inside the Parthenon, and I just said, no, I'm not doing that. Actually, my aluminum design might have worked, or it probably would have worked. I could have just bolted everything to the floor, which is a concrete floor. But there were engineers who wanted a beefier structure, so they took pylons, concrete pylons that go through the floor of the Parthenon down to bedrock, so through the basement. In the central gallery downstairs, there's a big square box in the center of the room. That is to hide the 4 pylons that go down to bedrock. And then everything is built on top of that, so the floor of the Parthenon doesn't actually support any of the weight of Athena.
Really? Was the process of building the oversized figures who are part of monumental figures similar in the way you created Athena in any way?
They're very, very similar to the way I first proposed to make Athena, which was enlarging by the contour and cross-section method, which is the ancient method, pre-digital, of course, and taking those cross-sections and contours and enlarging them on paper, recreating them on a larger scale in steel, and then wrapping everything with wire, and then covering that surface with gypsum cement, which is plaster, basically.
Well, and I want to talk more about your old school process here in the next segment. But I do wonder, looking back, as you're seeing Athena, you're pulling this all, your new work all around her. You talked about being a little naive, perhaps, in agreeing to build Athena, or being ambitious about how you do that. I do wonder, if you had to do it today, is that a project that you would take on?
Yes, I would. I would probably still want to do it today.
Yeah, knowing how hard it would be, or I guess maybe now you know how you would do it.
Yeah, it would be a lot easier today.
One of the things that Alan said over the course of the year we've spent planning the exhibit is that Athena was made by Nashville for Nashville, because you had a lot of help from
That's
people
true.
here in town.
Yeah. We're going to take one more break, and when we come back, we'll chisel away at Alan LaQuire's old school process. I got to laugh there. Talk about the future of sculpting in Middle Tennessee. Stay with us. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We're joined by sculptor Alan LaQuire, who is responsible for Athena in Nashville's replica of the Parthenon, unveiled 35 years ago. This summer, she's also joined by other monumental figures, which we've been talking about, some of them even suspended from the ceiling inside the Parthenon. It's quite a thing to behold, or it will be once it's completed. Alan, it strikes me that you are this person known for colossal work. Actually, can you help me from an artistic point of view? Is the word colossal mean something specific?
No.
You stopped yourself earlier this hour and said, well, maybe it's heroic size. And I thought, wow, this shows how much I know about art.
Well, anything twice life size or larger, I consider colossal, although there's no hard and fast rule about that. Anything more than 20% larger than life is heroic scale.
Well, more specific than I imagined. But so, you didn't just do Athena. You also did Musica, which is at the Music Row roundabout, one of the largest bronze figure groups in the world. I imagine that colossal work requires a big team. So who helps you with these projects?
Well, for the current show at the Parthenon, I've had the privilege of working with 12 or 13 young artists, assistants, including my main assistant, Amber Lely, who she's the studio director now. She's an incredible artist. She recently completed the Celestial Falls, which is a suspended artwork at the New Donaldson Library. And in that process of creating her public art, she had a lot of young artists working with her, and they sort of moved from her project to my project, and it's been really fun working with them.
How much is the goal there to kind of transfer your techniques and know-how and maybe even just your gumption to do big things to a new generation?
Yes, I'm doing that, and that feels great. In the world of sculpture, the skills that I learned as a young man are sort of bypassed. People bypass them because you can do sort of the same thing with digital techniques, and so I'm training them to do it in the old-fashioned way. But
because it's better, because it's what would you? How do you sell them on that?
I consider it better.
Yeah.
I consider it better because the artist's hand is required for every stage of the process, which is not true of digital enlarging.
I mean, it sounds like you don't even use a calculator when it might be helpful.
No, we use a measuring tape and calipers.
Yeah. And so what is it about having, such a close touch there that from an artist's point of view makes it improves the final product? It's
I'm sort of down on this idea that art has to be perfect. To me, it's more exciting when you see the traces that the artist has left, like the maquettes and small models that Rodin made, for example, are more interesting to me than the finished works most of the time.
I mean, we all know that music that's generated by AI or something, it's like it's too clean, it's too perfect. You want to hear
right, exactly
the singer breathing.
Right.
Your public commissions, I mean, you've done so many. They include several women's suffrage memorials too. A Tennessee Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Is that the one that's on the plaza, Legislative Plaza?
Yes.
Okay. And, fur trader Timothy DeMumbrian, which I'm not sure I realized was you. Maybe even, did you do one of Jack Daniel?
I did. Yeah.
For the distillery?
Yes.
But we still consider that public, I guess. That's seen by enough tourists. But there are all these accurate depictions of the actual figures, which obviously, Athena may be one of the few who isn't an actual figure. So why is realism important to you?
Realism is just inescapable. When I started out, I never really wanted to make realistic sculpture, but I was sort of bound to because of the tastes of the public in this area. I mean, I realized from the beginning I would have to conform to whatever those were. And so I became adept at making realistic work, but it wasn't my goal. It was never my goal.
But it sounds like at some point you embraced that, and now it's what you'd want. Am I missing something?
Well, it's a love-hate sort of thing.
Is the hate because everyone's going to judge it based on reality and think, that doesn't look quite like that person?
Well, take Jack Daniel, for example.
Okay.
But I had a picture of, I think there is only one picture of him, and it's just of his head. So everything else about that statue is invented. It's not, there's no hardcore realism in any of that. It's all imagined and created in clay. So that's why it was interesting for me to do. It's if I had to make a perfectly realistic statue, it would be unbearable.
Well, how do you handle criticism's the wrong word. I'm thinking you just being in the room as people who don't even know you're the sculptor are commenting, taking in the work. Maybe this never happens, but I'm just imagining overhearing the comments and I don't know, having a tough time with that. Does this occur?
Oh, yeah.
What comes to mind?
I love being in the Parthenon and watching people come up the steps and into the room with Athena and seeing her for the first time. And I love the comments. The comments are all over the place. But for most people, it's they're awestruck and they say some really interesting things.
Well, we'll bring back in Jennifer Richardson, curator of the Parthenon. Now you've got 40-foot tall, 42-foot, nearly 42 feet, Athena, along with these other larger-than-life figures surrounding her, some of which will be suspended from the ceiling. How does size change the experience for this audience, especially if you're talking about an audience that, might be more tourist than art aficionado?
Yeah, if we had small sculptures, they would probably get lost in that enormous space. And I think Alan was right to make these monumental-sized figures. What's so special about it is that these are regular people, because he mentioned the head of Constantine earlier, and emperors would often be enlarged, kings and queens and mythological figures. But to take people from Nashville and make them on that size really says something. And that's been true throughout the history of art. I think today we kind of forget and just assume artists can make things whatever size they want, but that hasn't always been historically true. So I don't want to say they compete with Athena in that space, but they stand proudly with her in that space.
Helen, Director of Education at the Parthenon, what is your hope for the public's reaction, seeing these powerful women, all kind of together there alongside Athena?
Oh, I have several things that I think would be wonderful to come out of this. It gives us a way to highlight the contributions of women sculptors who contributed to both versions of the Parthenon. Enid Yandel was a woman sculptor who created a large statue of Athena that stood outside the Parthenon during the exposition. And Belle Kinney-Schultz was a female sculptor who created the pedimental, the triangle ends of the building, the sculptures there for our 1920s version. I also think it's really wonderful to highlight Alan's career and the development of his career. Give people a chance to understand that he's been working his entire life on creating sculptures, and Athena was just the start.
Yeah.
So those are a couple interesting connections.
Alan, I think you had said that the Parthenon to you had always kind of been this symbol of feminine power, but I wonder, did it kind of change the course of your your life's work as a sculptor, kind of really focusing on powerful women?
I sort of intended to do that all
Really?
all along. I wanted to sort of level the playing field between portraits of men and women in public monuments, which is there are very few portraits of women in public, and as much as I could, I've done that. I've done, I think, 25 different portrait statues and sculpture of women around the state of Tennessee, which is helping to level that playing field.
You're saying if you zoom out, there are going to be more public statues of men than women by far.
Right, of course, yeah.
So leveling the playing field, I guess, requires digging a little deeper than just who was the president, who was the leader of this or that.
Right, and for the past 40 years, I've been subject to whatever commissions I could either win, if there were competitions, or I won a very important one, which was a woman's suffrage monument for the state capitol. And that led to 5 other major commissions of women's suffrage statues.
Including one in Centennial Park, right?
Right, yes, right in front of the Parthenon.
What's the significance of that, having that, kind of on the same plot of ground?
Well, I think it's wonderful. But historically, it's, that's where the women who marched in like 1918 for the right to vote ended their march in Centennial Park and made speeches there. So it's an important historical location, but also I love the fact that it's so close to the Parthenon because, you go inside, there's the giant statue of Athena, and then outside you have these wonderful real women that are sort of with her, standing with her.
With your monumental figures exhibit, you mentioned a book that's coming. And what can we expect?
The book is really sort of my personal account of how I made the statue.
Of Athena.
Of Athena, and how the archaeological research that was done to create my version.
Do you consider it your, I guess to skip to another part of the art world, your magnum opus? I mean, it seems odd because you were such a young man at the time, but does everything kind of point back to Athena, this 42-foot tall goddess?
Well, I hope not. That's I considered it sort of a research project and like the culmination of my training, because I learned so much while I was doing it, and I hope that the work that I'm displaying now with monumental figures surpasses the achievement of Athena.
And what would someone see? Let's say who's not the aficionado in your newer work that shows your progress as a sculptor over 35 years.
I have to leave that to the viewer.
I guess so.
I've sort of developed a style which I hope is brings in a lot of the energy of the natural world. So it's not just dry realism like we were talking about. It's realistic living figures, but influenced by the hand of the sculptor and the materials that he's using.
Well, Alan LeQuire, thank you for joining this hour. Also, thanks to Jennifer Richardson and to Helen Sanders from the Parthenon. This is Nashville, is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Josh Deepen, directed by Tasha A.F. Limley, board operators Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music under me are LaRange and Namir Blade. Special thanks to Andre LeQuire and also to my friend Wesley Payne. Listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get your good podcasts. The conversation does not have to end right here. You can comment. You can tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message on the phone, old school, 615-751-2500. You can also find us on socials at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer, and we'll see you tomorrow.